Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Brent, what's the setup?
The bombs fell, and the world ended. A man and his pregnant wife survived the blasts. Their son would be born into a world changed entire. It grew darker and colder and more violent. The new world was grim and gray and relentless, and the wife could not bear to live in it. The man and his young son had to set out on the road, alone, heading south. The road, though, is dangerous. Cannibals and slavers and men driven mad with hunger roam the hills. Even if the man can avoid the marauders, will he be clever enough and lucky enough to find food and supplies in the picked-over remains of civilization to feed his son? And every day that they do survive, they have to ask themselves if it's worth surviving. What awaits them in the south, on the coast?
I'm Cody.
And I'm Brent.
And we are the Hugonauts, here to review and discuss with you the best sci-fi novels of all time. The Road by Cormac McCarthy was published in 2006, won the Pulitzer Prize. That's a high honor.
The Pulitzer.
The big one. And it's about 287 pages or 6.5 hours on audiobook.
Yes, so excited to talk about The Road. Our next episode in 2 weeks will be on The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, which we just did as part of the book club over on Discord. So we've been chatting about that with a bunch of you, which has been so fun. If you want to talk about the books that we read here on the show, go join the Discord. It's been so fun.
And thanks to those of you who've left us reviews, just a couple offhand. We got T-Mart, Travis Martin. Thank you. Drew Samuel and Deli Joe Nut. Thanks to you and others who've reviewed us. It's really fun to read those. They're very nice.
Yeah, all those reviews on Apple Podcasts and Podchaser and all the other places. And then comments on the YouTube videos. Anyway, it's all so helpful and so nice. Thank you all so much. Really, really helps new people find out about it.
Yeah, and it reminds us that there are people listening to the show, because I feel like we make it and it's like, oh, Brent likes the edit. That's so fun. And then I forget that a bunch of people are gonna actually listen in the world.
Yep, for sure.
Brent, what do you think about The Road?
Okay.
How many stars are you giving this bad boy?
Yeah, all the stars, 5 stars. It's off the charts. It's so good. I think Cormac McCarthy is my favorite writer of all time. Now, obviously, that's an opinion, but also obviously he's the best. He is just... I'm just so happy he wrote a sci-fi book for us to be able to talk about him on the show. So anyway, so much more to say. But The Road is just so dark and terrifying and beautiful. And then also full of grit and hope at the same time. Anyway, it's just so great. I love it. 5 out of 5 for sure. What do you think?
Super emotionally dynamic. I'm also giving it a 5, which is, this is a long run of double 5s. We've really been picking stuff that we think is the best lately.
Yeah, we've had a great awesome. Couple months here. It's been so fun reading so many good books. Yeah.
But The Road, I think, is 5 because it's, just one thing to say about it. It has many elements, but I really enjoyed reading something post-apocalyptic that doesn't have any of the kind of personal post-apocalyptic fantasy appeal that other books in this bend have. It's a book that tells you, please do your part to not let this happen to the world, because it will be awful and way worse than anything we have now. It's a great reminder.
Yeah, writing emails is not so bad when you compare it to living in the world of The Road for 15 minutes.
You want to drink ashy water through a rag? Not me.
No, I do not. Yeah.
Let's start it up with what caused the post-apocalypse in this, or the regular, I suppose, apocalypse in The Road? What's the setup for that?
So this is the second time I read this. The first time it sort of seemed like it wasn't clear and he didn't spell it out. On the second read, where I was paying more attention, I saw it. There's just one quick line where he mentions this very bright flash outside their house. And anyway, he basically makes it clear it's nuclear bombs that have fallen so many worldwide that now they're living in a nuclear winter. So anyway, yeah, that's a bad one. But I do generally think like the ideas of the road work for any like extremely, extremely bad social collapse. But anyway, yeah, the particular flavor here is Nukes, the bad one.
Yeah. And the world is as he makes you feel throughout the book, very cold, very bleak, and very ashy.
So fucking gray. Everything's gray. The sky is gray. The trees are burned. The road is gray. And it's so cold it will crack stones. I love that line.
Oh yeah. And the balance that he creates through, I mean, just continually hammering in how freezing cold it is. I mean, you feel that cold, but then also they're constantly finding when they're on the road, the tar is everywhere because it was melted in the explosion and everything's burned, which is why it's cold because there's so much ash in the atmosphere. And they find all of these bodies, these crozzled bodies of people who couldn't escape the fire who were burned alive. So you've got both the fire and the freezing fallout from it that just feel like the two extremes, and you can't escape from either. And also, I brought it up early, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about the word crozzled real quick.
Yeah, I love crozzled. So first, as I was reading the book, he uses lots of like great vocab words, but he also used crozzled. And so the rote I took was like, hey, he uses all these incredible vocabulary words, but he also makes words up. And in both cases, it's actually fine because like from the context, the point of his writing is to like give you this feeling and it just like lives in your chest. And so it's sort of okay that you don't quite know what the words mean. And also you can sort of pick it up from the feeling. But then fact checked ourselves. Crozzled is a real word. Well, how did he know the word crozzled? It means like burned to like a crisp, basically. But you can just tell from the sound. Like
it's specifically like the removal of moisture through burning, like the crinkling of something.
Yeah. Anyway, his vocabulary is insane to the point that I thought he was making words up. But yeah, no, they're real. He's just very, very good at it. But it's not like you don't need to be in the dictionary because you can just tell. You can just tell what's going on. If you want to spend some time in the dictionary, I'm not telling you not to. It's educational. You'll learn about crozzling. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and his vocabulary is wonderful, but not overbearing, and his writing style is incredibly spare. His dialogue is spare.
The sentences are short. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He gets across what he needs to get across, and he's one of those writers who you just come away with a lot of feeling, like you were in the story, and emotional, and you feel a strong emotional and kind of visceral connection to the text, but it's not hard to read. So it's hard to nail down why he's so good at writing, but I think just because his editing and his language is just very succinct.
Yeah, he does do a couple, while we're talking about his writing style, there's another thing we should talk about, which is he does not use a lot of punctuation, including he never uses quotation marks, and he also doesn't tell you who's talking. And that may sound confusing, but like a lot of literature, actually, in other literature, it happens for other reasons. But what I would say is like, just keep reading. If you like lose the track for a second of like who's talking, don't go back and try to like count it out or whatever. Just sort of trust that if you keep reading and just go a couple more lines, like it will be made clear again. You just have to sort of like move through it and let that feeling that he's creating catch up with you, because it will. But anyway, it is a really interesting thing. Literally no quotation marks anywhere ever.
Which is different if you read the audio or if you listen to the audiobook like I did, which is maybe the audiobook of this is wonderful. I'm looking for who read it in our notes, and his name is Tom Stechelt. I assume it's pronounced. There's a lot of CHTs in this
it's like
name.
14 TCHs in a row. Yeah.
He does a fabulous job of like acting the way that dialogue is supposed to sound. So even a line that's just like, why did you think of that? he's like, "Why did you think of that?" And like puts a little laugh at it. So you know what the characters are going through and doing. I thought it was a particularly fabulous read. Because it almost reads like a script.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, the dialogue is really, really good. It is short, but it feels like hyper realistic, like the way people actually talk, and it gets you so much insight into the characters. But yeah, I was really happy when you told me he read it well, because I think with a bad reader, you could come away with the feeling that like the relationship between the man and the son is like not good. But in fact, I think it's like very, very good. But it's all like it's in like the subtext.
Yeah, the intonation, the performance, which, I mean, if we're going off script here anyways, we should probably mention the movie that came out shortly after the book with Viggo Aragorn and others.
Viggo Aragorn Mortensen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually have not seen it. Did you like it? Does it like stand up?
Oh, yeah. It's fabulous. It's a great rendition. And I think because credit to Cormac, kind of like No Country, although No Country's extended from
No
his
Country for
text,
Old Men,
but,
also written by Cormac McCarthy.
sorry.
Yeah.
The road is basically just what happens in the book. There's a couple of omissions and things they change a little bit, but the book reads like it could be made into a movie, and it was.
Okay,
That's a
good. Well, I'm glad they did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It does feel like a screenplay, like with the dialogue and like, there's just not a lot extra. So,
in the best prosy way, which we should probably talk about the book. There's not many characters in this book, are there?
No, there are two. There's the man and the boy. That's it.
Yep. Even fewer names.
Literally, there are no. Oh, there's one name. We're going to talk about that in the post spoilers. There's one named character.
Well, there's a couple like ancillary characters, but yeah, we're just following around the man and the boy essentially.
Yeah, the boy breaks my heart. His dad is always trying to. There's not a lot of food around, as you may expect. His dad is always trying to like give him all the. They find a soda, and his dad's trying to give him the whole soda. He's trying to like give him all the food, and the son will like never let him. He's always like making sure his dad has enough to eat. And then at the same time, though, the thing that broke my heart is at one point early in the book, they like find a child's toy that has been buried in their like their luggage for a long time. And it comes out and the boy like is playing with it for a while. It's like a push truck. And I was like, oh God, this is like a 5-year-old kid. I thought, you don't like to picture a 5-year-old kid in the ashy dust of the nuclear winter, but that is the situation.
Yeah, they make that a little more clear in the movie, actually.
Well, because you can see him right at the beginning. Yeah.
Well, there's a scene of Charlize Theron giving birth, the wife character who's also sometimes in the book here and there. But yeah, because you can see that he's that age of a child. That's a much better point. He's such a good character, though. I feel like not a lot of authors and movies, writers, whatever, nail children in childhood that well. It's tough to reconnect with what children are really like. And I think the way that Cormac really brings the childlike nature out of the boy is through the way he worships the man and the dialogue that they have. There's this wonderful line where the kid asks him, what are your long-term goals? What are our long-term goals? Something like that. And the dad goes, what? Where did you hear that? And the kid says, oh, you said it a while back. And that's just so quintessentially childlike, and it also endears you even more to the character and to the man and the boy's relationship, because you can just tell he idolizes him, and he's following his plan of getting south and carrying the flame, being the good guys, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then the man is also an incredible character. He is extremely competent. He clearly loves his son so much. He doesn't talk that much. He's like a strong, silent type, which is, from having read a bunch of Cormac stuff, like that's like kind of his, it's not always the case, but very often his main character is like a hyper competent, kind of loner man who like doesn't talk very much. Anyway, they're all extremely likable and lovable. They're great characters. And this man like very much fits that mold.
He really does. And I said it a little bit earlier, but you want to tell us about carrying the fire? It's just such a great phrase.
Yeah, I love this phrase. It's this. It's like a metaphor that the man and the sun sort of pass back and forth a few times in the book, and it has like a lot inside it. So it's like they are carrying the fire, and it's this idea of like being good and representing something like bigger than yourself, and just like in this dark, brutal, cold world, like they carry the fire and they care and they like don't do bad things, and it's just it like has a lot inside it. I like it. I like think about it in my regular life. I read this book like 10 years ago. I think like, oh, I've got to make sure I keep carrying the fire. Like it's like gotten into my psyche. Anyway, so yes, I love this one.
The idea of the drive to be good, to be a good person, without any sort of inherent reward in it.
Yeah, there's no law. Like they could be lawless cannibals like exist in this world, but like
easily.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's what like most people are.
Yeah, the ones who are still alive anyway. Yeah,
which I think kind of dovetails into another thing I love about the book, which is analyzing the necessity of purpose. You know, that's one of the things that sci-fi spec fic does really well is dismantles and intellectualizes the idea of like what's the reason for being, what's the purpose, and you know, often the answer is, which I agree with, you have to create your own purpose and reason for being, and for being good specifically. And this, you know, here we have the man's purpose is the boy, and the boy's purpose is kind of the man.
Yeah, and carrying the fire is the boy's like the boy's thing.
Totally. And I will say one last thing before we move on to recommendations about this novel. I mean, it just makes you feel like you're in this awful bleak world, and it inspires me so much in my day-to-day life. I feel like it's lasted for a couple weeks since reading the book, that I'm just more able to appreciate every small thing. It's like that you know, how our modern conveniences and kind of like the beauty of society and people generally getting along, and what it takes to be where we are. So it was an excellent read for that reason too. One of those books that lasts, has a lasting impact.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to eat like old canned food and drink gross ashy water. Yeah, it kind of puts it all in perspective.
Yeah, and just being so cold all the time. I don't like being cold. So cold. Not fun. Yeah. Okay, who are we reading if we liked this book?
If you read this book and you love it, like you have got to read more Cormac McCarthy. He's just a genius. From the ones I've read, Blood Meridian is like his most literary book. I think it's the most like critically acclaimed. It's also like sort of the hardest to read. But the feel of that one is like it's dry. It's set in the American Southwest in like the 1800s-ish, and it's just about like relentless evil. Blood Meridian is hard. Then there's Child of God, which is like swampy and sweaty and godless. And then I read The Passengers, his last book, which honestly I did not like as much. But anyway, yes. So of those, that's the quick rundown on the ones I've read. I'm so excited to read No Country for Old Men. I've had it on my shelf for a while, and I'm like saving it for when I'm like in a very bad place and I need Cormac, like a new Cormac to pick me up.
It's interesting to like a time when you need Cormac. Is that a time when you're too happy?
No, it's when I just need like some beautiful art. Oh, and I forgot All the Pretty Horses. He wrote a cowboy love story, which they turned into a Matt Damon Penelope Cruz movie, and it's great. I'm not like a love story guy. I love that cowboy love story.
Yeah, anyway, yeah. Well, this is probably his most famous one, honestly. Okay, another rec, Parable of the Sower, pretty obvious rec by Octavia Butler. We have an episode on it. You know, another kind of realistic middle future post-apocalyptic landscape. Not as grim, but still grim, and just a different tackle into a realistic post-apocalyptic world instead of a kind of a violence porn killing zombies one, which can also be fun. And then finally we have
Yeah, Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr.
Duh. Of course.
Yeah, so that's about a post-nuclear war society. They're trying to. It's set much farther in the future than the road is, but it's about these monks trying to maintain knowledge from the time before the fall. And it's great, super entertaining. It's much more lighthearted than the road, but also extremely sobering about the risks of nuclear war. So anyway, yeah, great one.
Carrying the Fire of Knowledge, or not. You should check it out. It's one of our favorite books.
Oh, one super quick thing before we do post spoilers. I can't believe
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this in the end. Part of the reason we decided to do this episode now, Cormac McCarthy just passed away, which is really sad.
Yeah.
But he, for many years, he was always my answer for like, who is your favorite living novelist? Which is, anyway, normally I don't really care about like celebrity stuff happening, but I was like pretty legit sad when he passed away. But anyway, he had a very long, great life, wrote a ton of good books. So go read some, celebrate him.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's chat about what happens in the rest of the road in 3, 2, 1. Brent, kick it.
Okay, post spoilers. Here we go. So first of all, we learn that the woman, the wife, the mother is gone because she killed herself maybe a year or two before the main events of the road. She just could not take living in this bleak world anymore. There's a scene of her sort of talking with the man where she's telling him like, this is it, I'm going to do it. And it's so hard. Anyway. Okay.
He's begging and pleading for her not to leave them. And she says, I must do it. I will do it. It's ugh.
Yeah, it's very tough. Anyway, so then back in the present, they narrowly escape a group of armed men. Scary moment, but they lose their food supplies in escaping, basically. And so they're starving over the next few days, and they find this creepy mansion. And in it, they find a locked trapdoor in the pantry floor, which the man gets excited about, but the boy is really creeped out. Anyway, they break it open, and inside they find a bunch of naked people. Some of them are half-eaten. It's horrifying. So horrifying. There's other horrifying stuff that happens in the book. We're just going to use that as like an example of like the bleakness of this world. Okay. They find a doomsday prepper's hidden bunker. They get some more food. They're able to make it to the coast eventually. There's a lot more drama along the way, but they make it. The man, however, has been getting sicker and sicker along the way. He's got this bloody cough from having to breathe the ashy air. And shortly after they get to the coast, he realizes he's dying. Basically, he can't go on. They spend a few days with him and the boy sort of having some really hard moments, but good moments together. And then the man dies. It's very heartbreaking. And then another man shows up and approaches the boy and says that he's from a commune of good people. They have children. And the boy asks him if he's carrying the fire. And he says yes. And it feels like this is true. So the book ends on simultaneously like an incredibly sad, but also maybe hopeful note that the boy is going to live. But yeah, so that's it.
It is. And I don't know how he does it, but that striking the balance of a bleak world that you just want to not happen for the characters in it and for yourself, and then also having just a touch of hope that feels realistic to that bleak world and also feels inspiring is so masterful. I definitely, I think we both cried. We texted about it when you finished. We both cried at the end of this one. I mean, it's just a powerful novel and a powerful ending.
It doesn't even matter that you know what's coming. You can't not get hit by it. The relationship between these two is so good, and yeah, it's so sad.
We also were chatting a bit about. I mean, you brought it up in the summary, but we talked about it in Solaris about the idea of pop scare, cheaper horror versus psychological thriller. And Cormac's got some moments in here that are kind of right in between. They're just so visceral and real, and you can feel yourself on both sides of this situation that they just seep into your veins. I mean, they just like ice veins. So him and the boy finding the group of like starving, half naked people in the cellar
Half
who are
eaten. Yeah. Oh my
yeah,
God. Still
one guy's
alive, but like
half
eaten
eaten,
from the waist down. Oh my God. Yeah.
and the other people are just waiting in the corner knowing that they're going to be next, but there's nothing they can do because they're weak and they're trapped in a but it's not a scenario in which like The Last of Us or something where you're like, "Ooh, how are they going to escape this one?" It's like they're not escaping. They're just going to live and starve until they get chopped up and eaten. It's just woo. And then there's the
Yep.
they see a people traveling with a pregnant woman, and then they come across their camp later, and there's a infant roasting on the fire, and it's just horrifying. Plus, you're not
Yeah. You don't know
sure.
if yeah, was the woman like tortured and they took her baby, or was it born dead and they like decided to do this anyway, or did she like give her baby for them to all eat? It's just like there's ugh.
Yeah, or did it come out? Are they good people and it came out stillborn and they were like, well, we have to eat this now, and then they couldn't bring themselves to do it, and they decided to just like take their chances and move on because it's so awful. Like, yeah, there's just a lot of open for interpretation stuff, and very disturbing imagery that sticks with you, and again tells you, maybe we should keep everything going the way it is.
Yep. So there's one other scene that we should, I think, talk about because we both loved it so much. When they meet the old man, you want to tell, I guess, what happened there, and then we can talk about why we loved it.
The old man scene is so good. They meet this old man who it turns out his name is Eli. And it's so good because, well, first of all, you get to see the boy's gentle nature. He insists on giving him some food.
Yeah, they find this old man walking on the road with nothing. He's like, it looks like he's 90. He's shuffling down the road with a cane. He has no supplies. They're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and the boy insists that they feed him and then take him to dinner. And the man he actually is a pretty nice guy. And there's just this wonderful dialogue scene between pretty much the only thing cut from the movie, unfortunately, but between the man and the old man, Eli, about just kind of like a lot of little philosophy moments, and just the man is, they don't really need to know much about each other, but the old man's lying to him for no reason. And then he recants his lies because he realizes there's no reason. And it just is a really natural feeling scene. They don't finish a lot of thoughts. And it ends with a wonderful line, which I think brings to bear the idea of like, let's avoid an apocalypse instead of like, let's do like prepping and cool stuff. The man asks the old man, did you get ready for it? And the old man says, no, what would you do? And it's such a great point. There's nothing to do except try to prevent the scenario from taking place.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the other thing I loved about that scene, I mean, first of all, it like shows the boy and the man both so well. Like the boy wants to like be good for everyone. The man wants to be good for the boy. So the man doesn't really want to feed this old guy because they have to give him some of their limited food, but the boy like talks him into it. And it's just like a great moment to like show both of their characters. And then with Eli, there's like it's the most like mystical scene in the book where like, how is this 90-year-old guy with a cane with no supplies alive? It's like not clear. There's sort of like some wandering Jew vibes where like, is this a real person even? Or is this like, and he says he can't really see well, but he sees like an aura around the boy. So he's like sort of seeing the boy's like saintliness, godliness, like whatever. So it's like a very interesting metaphysical thing. And it led me to kind of do, yeah, go ahead.
But it's also not necessarily, he's just saying stuff. So it doesn't feel like there's any fantasy.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely does not feel like fantasy. This is just like me reading in quite a lot to be like, ooh, what's the symbolism of this old man? So anyway, yeah, I just really, really loved it and led me to do a bunch of research about the wandering Jew and like what that idea means. And, it was fun. It's a fun thing.
Yeah. And you're just two people shooting the shit in a world where nothing matters anymore, but around a boy that's like, maybe something does still matter, because he exists. And he's kind. There's also a fabulous scene just to like give the kind of emotional dynamics of this novel a taste. In the middle, when they find this bunker, the man and the boy accidentally stumble upon a bunker that's fully stocked, and you feel as strongly as they do about like, oh my God, there's canned fruit, there's all this food, there's ammunition, there's clean blankets, it's warm down here. They get to take a bath. They get like all of these mundane things, these small things that don't even seem that good to us in modern life, that we might even complain about having to take a bath or eat pears out of a can instead of fresh ones. Are like, it feels so powerful to them that they've stumbled upon this absolute treasure trove, and it's just I guess a good example of how wonderful Cormac's writing is, and his dynamic management of the emotions, and how hard he brings you into the world because you're feeling so excited about this for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a super heavy book, and it's like hopeful. Anyway, yeah, I just, you should read it. It's just so good. It's not that long. Just move right on through, and it'll just hit you like a truck. It's so good.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just a fabulous novel. We hope you read it, and we hope you join us next time for The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin.
For sure. Later, everybody. Keep reading.